Greetings to all my friends. I see there are people from different countries on the line, and I certainly welcome all of you to our session. This is the first of a series of brief talks and guided meditations that will hopefully happen every Thursday around 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Because if you're in Chicago, this is 2 hours ahead, 11 o'clock. If it's New York, it's 12 o'clock. If it's India, it's 9:30 p.m. So it'll be different in different places. The title of this session is called Luminous Journey. It's kind of a play on the book that I wrote that took about 40 years to write. It's an account of my experiences with three great sages, time that I spent in India mostly, and some in America and Canada as well. So we are luminous beings, but our light is covered by many coverings, many layers of mind, matter, illusion, emotions. And my great teacher, my beloved teacher, Sant Kirpal Singh said, feelings, emotions, and inferences are all subject to error. Seeing is above all. And above seeing is experiencing. And from experiencing comes oneness. How are we luminous beings? You know, from the tiniest atom to the vast universe, everything is filled with a tonal light. And that light, it shines in the darkness, as it is said in the Bible, but the darkness comprehendeth it not. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. Of course, this is a reference to the single or the third eye, through which that light enters our being and is perceived by us by our inward eye. But unless that portal is opened, we cannot see that light and we cannot pass through the portal. It is the divide between this world and the next. Our world of physicality, our world of emotions, our world of mind. And beyond that is the light of pure essence. And that is what and who we are. But that journey to that awareness may be convoluted and long. It may be painful. There was a great sage that lived around the turn of the 20th century. His name was Swami Ram Tirat, and he said, self-realization precedes God-realization. Guru precedes self-realization. Satsang, and satsang means when you have the company of an awakened being. It can also mean a spiritual gathering. But in its true essence, Sat means truth, eternal. Sang means association with. So satsang precedes Guru. And adversity precedes satsang. So adversity, these troubles and turmoils in our life, are the very goads that drive us towards our ultimate realization. As Buddha said, all life is suffering, but within and beyond that is pure bliss, and that is our nature. As a young lad, I'll just give you a brief history of my search, which began in my teens. And it was only after I had tried to end my life and found a purpose to continue on. And at the age of 17, I ended up in a monastery in the Chatsworth Mountains. These are the foothills outside of Los Angeles. And after I had been at this monastery for some time, I guess a week or so, during an evening concentration, that's what they call their kind of gatherings, I had my eyes closed, and as I was peering into the darkness, in the distance, I saw a light like a comet coming from me out of the darkness. And it came and it just washed over my awareness. And I felt this exhilarating joy. I was freed from my self-pity. I was freed from my suffering. And I was able to transcend the awareness of my body, of my mind, of myself, of my ego. And as I kept on looking into the center of that light that came from the distance, another would come, and another, and they would wash over me. And it felt like somehow I had entered the beating heartbeat of God. Although at that time I didn't believe in a God. I didn't believe that this world with all its cruelty and suffering could be the handiwork of a divine being. But behind the apparent is a divine intelligence. Well, that started me on my spiritual quest. And from this monastery, I next ended up at the Self-Realization Fellowship in Malibu. It's called the Self-Realization Fellowship Shrine. And it was founded by a great yogi whose name was Paramahansa Yogananda, and the author of a book that's been read millions of times called Autobiography of a Yogi. I'll just share a brief quote by Yogananda. And he said, "When you meditate long, the glory of the divine shines forth. You realize then that all along there was something tremendous within you, and you did not know it." One of the great American poets was Emerson. And he said, "To the illumined mind, the whole world burns and sparkles with light." So during my time in retreat, I had some unusual experiences, and those experiences lifted me beyond the worries of the lower self. And I came across a passage from the Bhagavad Gita. I think it was translated by Sir Edward Arnold. It said, "Let the yogi sit in a place that's neither too high nor too low, and he should fix his attention at the root of the nose, and he should make his mind as still as a candle in a windless place." You know, a candle is always flickering. That's our mind, it's always flickering. But when there's no wind disturbing it, then that flame begins to shine without flickering. The founder of the yoga system, whose name was Patanjali, he said in Sanskrit, "Yogishchit Vrit Nirodha." It means, yoga means the subsiding of all ripples or oscillations in the lake of the mind. The lake of the mind, you can imagine that every thought is like a pebble that's going into that lake. When it lands in the water, it spreads ripples. And you cannot see any reflection. And it's only when the lake becomes calm again that we perceive that mirror-like state. There are a couple of stories I'd like to narrate, and one is, there was and you may have heard the story before, there was a little cub, a little lion cub. He got separated from his mother and lost. He wandered through the forest. And at last he came to a field and he saw other creatures there. They were sheep. And the sheep were there eating grass. And the little cub wandered in amongst the sheep. And he identified with them. And like the sheep, he began eating grass and bleating, just like sheep. Now he stayed with the sheep for quite some time. And what happened is that one day a big lion came, and from a hilltop he looked down and he saw this unusual sight of a young lion behaving like a sheep. He saw that sheep, that lion who thought he was a sheep, eating grass and bleating just like the sheep. So he said, I better fix this. So he went down and he took that young lion by the neck, took him over to a pond of water and made him look into the water. And then he saw in the water his own reflection. And he realized that he was not a sheep anymore, that he was a lion. And then the big lion roared, and he made the young lion roar, so he roared, and all the sheep ran away. Well, we're kind of like sheeple. We're people that are behaving like sheep. And it's only when we come across a great lion that we can awaken to our true and essential nature. So within us is a pond. Within us is a lake of nectar. It is called the Amritsar. So when the big lion comes, ultimately he takes us to that place called Amritsar, the inner Sarovar, the inner lake of nectar. Makes us look in there and see, and we can see who and what we truly are, that we are not sheep anymore, but we are also lions, the kings of the forest, kings and the princes and the princesses of the forest. So my search led me, ultimately, took a few years, making a lot of stupid mistakes, and I ended up finding out about my great teacher. His name was Sant Kirpal Singh Ji. And it was quite an extraordinary experience. So one night, this is before I was initiated by him in 1965, but it was in 1964 that I had a remarkable experience where I saw him along with his guru, Baba Sawan Singh, and they were floating in a deep blue sky. These two great masters, they were radiating light and love back and forth to each other, and then they were streaming that light down to me. So just recently I tried to do a little painting of that, tried to capture that in paint. Of course you can't, because these experiences are way beyond our ability to vocalize, to write about, to play music to, or beyond paint and brushes and paper and canvas. But we can try, because we're only human beings, right? We can try. So I'll just show you that sketch. There we go. So trying to remember, exactly what that was like. It was something like this. And I just kind of painted this figure in down here, because as they were together, they were beaming light back and forth to each other, and then it was streaming down to me. And this went on for about an hour. And at the end of that experience, I woke up to my physical body, and I was never the same after that. So for weeks and months afterwards, I felt a kind of intoxication from that experience. It was a kind of an inebriation of the spirit. It was quite a beautiful thing. And I very much wanted to go and spend time with the saints. I wanted to go and visit, to see what it's really like, And I was very, very fortunate that after 2 years after I was initiated in 1965 in New York, I went to Vancouver Island, and from there I worked at various labor jobs. And I finally, at the very last moment, as I was leaving the door, I got permission, a written letter of permission to come to India and spend time with the Master at the Sawan Ashram in Old Delhi. So I went to my room there. I was given a room, a little tiny room in the ashram. That was more than sufficient for me. And I just was kind of floating on this wonderful kind of expectation of seeing in the flesh the Guru that had appeared to me 2.5 years earlier. And finally there was a knock on the door and said, "Brother, the Master will see you now." So I came over to his house and led into his bedroom, which was his office as well. And he was sitting on top of a clean white bed, sitting in a Siddhasana. Siddhasana is a pose where your right leg is resting on your left knee and the left leg is tucked underneath. And in fact, there's a painting over here of the Master sitting in that pose right there. He's sitting on a rock in the Ganges, but more about that later. Well, it was quite extraordinary, and as I sat before him, he offered me a chair to sit in, and instead I sat on the ground. I just wanted to sit on the ground before him, and he was, his bed was maybe a couple of feet high, so I was kind of looking up at him, and he was wearing these white clothes, and his long, beautiful silver beard was there, and this beautiful eyes, just sending out love. And I felt like my battered ship had finally found its harbor in the Master, and it was quite extraordinary. Well, before him, who could see everything that I was, everything I had been, that all-knowingness, I confessed to him that I had been a great sinner. And he looked at me, and he held my hands, he stroked my hands, and he said, "Master is for sinners." He said that at another time, he said, "Every saint has a past, and every sinner a future." Then he said, "I cut short my Bombay tour to be here when you arrived." And I thought, I must be dreaming. He who was renowned and loved by millions of people cut short his tour for a 23-year-old boy sitting at his threshold. So I had no money, I had no education to speak of, I had no status in this world, and yet he did that for me. Anyway, he kept me with him for about 7 months, and I went with him wherever he went. Sometimes I was the only Westerner there. Went to little villages, big cities, went up to the mountains of Kashmir, spent time with him in Rajpur. I didn't deserve all this, but I was just like a sponge, absorbing whatever I could and practicing the meditation. A meditation, it was expected of me to put in 4 to 6 hours of meditation a day, and sometimes more. And I gladly did it. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So, today I'd love to share with you just some tips about meditation that might help you to get to your own inner light and your own inner bliss, your own inner peace. You know? This is not owned by anyone, and it's not copyrighted. It doesn't belong to anyone, but it belongs to everyone. Truth is like that. It doesn't have a price tag on it. But there is a price, actually. It's the price of your own lower self. You have to give up your lower self to achieve the higher self. So it's important in meditation to have a fixed time every day that you sit for meditation. And in the beginning, you may only be able to sit for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. But as you go along, you increase the time so that you can comfortably sit for an hour or 2 hours or more. But you can't really do that unless you've got something to play with inside. You know, it's like if you lock a child in a dark room, that child might beat the walls and cry out. But if you give the child something to play with, some toys, it will calm down. So but inside, we have not the toys, but the joys of the inner light and the inner sound. I had some experience of inner light before I came to the Master. That was due to some background, some past, and perhaps also I was at the end of my rope, and I needed something to pull me out of the ditch. And that was a pure act of grace. But meditation can be practiced by anyone. They don't have to go through death or a near-death experience. It can be practiced by a child or an old centenarian. It can be practiced by anyone. And I've been practicing for almost 6 decades the meditation on the inner light and the divine sound current. So the sound is something that we can connect with, but it does require initiation. So I know that some people on this call are not initiates, and I'm not saying you have to get initiated. It's all up to you, whatever. But to get contact with that is something that takes a few more steps. But the light is something that is quite easy to experience if we can learn how to focus our mind, if we can learn to concentrate fully. And it's very easy for a child to experience the light. It's very difficult for older people to experience it because we are very cluttered. We have too many desires, too many thoughts. And whereas a child is very pure, and when they're given some meditation instruction, they can go in almost instantly and experience that radiant state, that state of our true essence. That light is the light that lighteth every man that cometh into the world. So, the first is you find a place that's very calm and quiet, it's cut off from the outside. You find a time when it's quiet. And the best time for meditating is an early morning, which means you have to sacrifice some shows, maybe some TV. You have to go to bed early, so you can get up early. And when you get up early in that quiet time before the world awakes, that is the great time for meditation. That's when you can not be distracted. Then you need to sit in a pose that's comfortable. You don't have to sit in a lotus posture. You don't have to sit in any austere position. I myself have found that the best, most practical position for me to sit for a long time in meditation is called the Siddhasana, which is that where your left leg is folded under your right leg is on top, and you sit in that position. But not everybody can do that, and it takes practice. And it's more difficult for older people or those who are carrying a bit too much weight. So you can sit in a chair. I wouldn't advise lying down on a bed because you would go to sleep. There's too much risk of going to sleep. You can even stand and meditate, but you might fall over it. But, it's better to sit. You can sit in a comfortable chair. You can sit cross-legged on the floor. If you can't do the siddhasana, it's okay. But you should not be hunched over, because the spine is a kind of a conduit for spiritual energy. And if you're slumped over, it's difficult to get up to this point. The light comes down from above. But if we're slumped over, we don't have so much. Another thing, it's not a bad idea that if you're sitting in a place, I found that it's easier to get to the inner light if you have some little source of light on the outside. If you're sitting in a pitch black room, it's okay. I mean, I meditate in a pitch dark room. But when you get conversant with meditation, become skilled at it, that you can meditate in a pitch black room, and yet it's like the outer sun is shining within you. Right? The inner light is not dependent on outer light, but sometimes it's just helpful for beginners to have some little bit of source of light on the outside. And then we sit in that comfortable position. And it may be helpful to take a few deep breaths, conscious breaths. You breathe in and you breathe out, and let all the tension that's in the body flow out. And then forget all about breathing, because we have to transcend the breath. Breathing yoga, breath yoga, is not the way of the masters. The master's way is of concentrating surat, or attention, without involving the prana system. Pranic system governs the breathing, the growing of hair, nails, the circulation of blood, etc. But the method of the saints is the controlling of the attention. Sant Rajendra Singh Ji Maharaj, who was a living master of this science, he said, when you concentrate in meditation, you experience light. When you lose your concentration, you experience darkness. It's so simple. Truth is simple. And if somebody's making it really complicated, then it's not truth. Truth is something that even a child can understand. And sometimes that truth may be beyond the ability of the most learned to absorb. I was once with the master when he said, you have to become an unlearned man. You have to give up and unlearn everything that you've learned to achieve that state. So meditation is a natural process. It allows us to experience our luminous selves. There are several helpful practices. One of them is called Simran, and this is given by an adept to the disciple. It is said that when the disciple is ready, the master appears. When the chela is ready, the guru appears. I am not a guru. I am not a master. I'm just a lucky fellow that happened to associate with some really great teachers, really great mentors. You could call them masters, but they themselves do not call themselves masters. If somebody calls themselves a master, then you better run away from them. The true masters are the most humble beings on this planet. They are the servants of humanity. They are like the ones who come to make friends with us. They live with us. They walk like us. They teach. They talk like us. They eat like us. They sleep like us. But they're fully conscious, and they've been given a commission to take the souls that are yearning back to their source. And they prescribe a system, a very scientific system of meditation. And so now I thought it would be a good idea to share with you some meditation instructions. And these meditation instructions are from my guru, my master, Sant Kirpal Singh Ji Maharaj. Now, I was initiated in New York City through a representative, and it was only 2 years later that I went to India and I sat at the feet of my guru, my master, and it was quite the experience, just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And if you're interested, I've written a book about that. You can see it online if you're interested. It's under arransart.org/writings. And it's free. It's available to everyone. When it was for sale, I donated all the money to charity for that. But these are some meditation instructions that are really powerful, and you may find them to be very beneficial for yourself. Meditation is the process of withdrawing the attention from the world outside and focusing it at the seat of the soul in the body, behind and between the two eyebrows. This point is known as the inner eye, the third eye, the single eye. In order to withdraw our attention and focus it on this point, mind must be controlled and stilled. Sit in one pose and move not your head, limbs, or eyes. Sit straight but relaxed, with no tension in the body below. Sit still, please. Close your eyes as in sleep, and look sweetly, lovingly, intently into the middle of the darkness lying in front of you. You will see a dark veil, and that which sees the dark veil without the help of your physical eyes is the inner eye. Do not put any strain on your physical eyes, nor turn them upwards. Pay no attention to the breathing process. Let it go on naturally. Those who are initiated repeat the 5 charged words, one by one, very slowly, mentally, internally, at intervals, so that your inner eye is not disturbed. Those who have not been initiated, just sit in sweet remembrance of God, repeating with the tongue of thought any name of God or saint which you hold dear. As you look within, you will see a sky or a blue sky. If you look minutely into it, you will find it studded with stars, or you may see pinpoints of light. If so, try to locate the big star out of them and fix your whole attention on that. Then you may see the inner sun or inner moon. If so, focus all your attention into the middle. It will break into pieces, and you will cross it. Beyond, you will see the radiant form of the Master or his Master. Become the eye itself. Go on looking constantly without a break. Any effort on your part stands in the way. Let yours be an effortless effort, and you will find that your soul will be withdrawn from the body. This practice, if you follow it carefully, minutely, with full concentration, again, no strain on any part of the eyes or forehead, but you focus your attention within, and you will begin to experience, as he said, the inner sky, the pinpoints of light, the blue sky, the sun and moon. And beyond that, the radiant form of your teacher will appear. And you must, while doing that, slowly repeat some name of God or of some saint. Keep your mind from wandering. A Christian might use the word God, or might use the word Jesus, or a Buddhist might use the word Buddha, or you could use any term that you like, but you need to have something to keep the mind from wandering. And when you focus it fully, you will begin to lose awareness of yourself, lose awareness of your body, and you will enter into that luminous realm. So now we'll sit for a few minutes in silence, and afterwards I'll see if there's some question or two that I might be able to answer. And by no means do you have to stop meditating when I ask you to stop. You can continue meditating to your heart's content. with time and practice, you'll find that you will have more joy and more happiness on the inside. Even if it seems the whole world is going to pieces, you have your inner peace. And with all the things we have to face, climate change, the pandemic, we have within ourselves a refuge, and that refuge we have to enter, explore, and rest in that. I'll see what questions there might be here. I don't have time for too many, but let's see what. Any questions there? No, no questions. Very good. Thank you for joining today. And I wish you all a safe, happy, healthy week ahead. Is there a question? Somebody said, I used to feel heavy breathing while meditating. Okay, so breathing is something that we need to transcend in meditation. Just let your breathing go on naturally. Don't pay any attention to it. And you put your attention up here in the single eye or the third eye. But instead of turning your eyeballs upward, as you might imagine, trying to look back, you don't. You look into the middle of what you see right in front of you. I once met an initiate of Baba Sawan Singh who told me that he had been practicing 2 hours to 3 hours meditation every day, and he never saw any light. For years he did this. And one day, his guru, Baba Sawan Singh, appeared to him in meditation. He said, look, you've been doing meditation incorrectly. You've been directing your attention back this way when you should be directing it forward, right in front of you, into the light, into the darkness. So you focus your attention and penetrate the darkness, and then the darkness, the curtain will open, and you will then pass into the light. And then, his name was Jivan Singh, and so after that, Jivan never had a problem in his meditation. So sometimes we get held up just because some silly mistake that we're doing in meditation. There's another question here. The idea of letting go of the love of the lower self seems like a hard thing to do when we don't yet know the higher self. How? Well, I'm sure you know what the lower self is. So it would be the opposite of the lower self. The lower self, of course, is one that's riddled with lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. So the opposite of those is purity, forgiveness, non-attachment, and letting go of the ego as much as possible. So we cling to our imperfections, and we obsess about them. I remember often Master Kripal used to tell people as they were leaving, go jolly, go jolly. So I remember this person from South Africa was leaving, and he said, go jolly. And then the person said, how can we go jolly naturally, Master? And he said, look, why hide in the darkness? Come out into the light. And that way you can go jolly naturally. Did your med change after you met the Master? Oh, yes. The meditation deepened, it became steady, and it became my rock of support. And it's my foundation of my life. And before I do anything, I have to make sure that I first get in my 2 hours, at least 2 hours of meditation every day. It takes time to get there, but It's very difficult to climb the mountain, but it's very easy to fall down the mountain. If you know what I mean. Rumi says, come, come, yet come again. Even if you've broken your promises 1,000 times, that you still come. There's always room for you in the shelter of the saint. So by lower self, we aren't just talking about the worldly self. The lower self is the worldly self. The higher self is our luminous self, our luminous essence. And to get to that, we have to peel away the covers that enshroud it. You know, Shams Tabriz, the great Persian mystic, he was the master of Maulana Rumi, the great Rumi, the great poet. So his master was not so sophisticated as Rumi was. He was a wild man. And he told truth very bluntly. It doesn't matter whether whether you express it bluntly or eloquently. He said, outwardly, you are only a handful of straw, but inwardly you are more than 100 suns. The masters say that our soul, when it crosses the third region, it has the bright light of 16 suns combined. That is how much brightness our soul has. Many suns combined. In the Essene Gospel of John, Jesus talks about the light of the Father. He said it is 1,000 times brighter than the brightness of 1,000 suns. 1,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000 suns. And that is the true home of our Father, from where we came, and to whom we one day will all return. Thank you all, and God bless you all, and be safe, go strong, be jolly, go jolly.